Hey, hey, hey. It's a filter free Friday, y'all. Listen, I am so glad y'all here. I was thinking this week about scapegoating. If you are not familiar, I'm sure you're familiar with the term, but you might not know where it originated. In biblical times, when a community was trying to rid themselves of their sins, everybody would put their sins on the back of a goat, and symbolically send the goat off into the wilderness. And then that way they had been removed of all guilt and all culpability related to whatever sins had been committed. And that's where the term scapegoat comes from. It's when we blame a person or a group, um, specifically to like direct attention away from whatever the real issues are. And I generally um, avoid talking about like too many things that are happening politically at the national level. I generally like to focus on things that are happening here around my own town. I definitely avoid talking about pop culture and famous people, mostly because, especially if it's negative, mostly because I just know that I don't know these people. And I'm just careful about being one of those folks who has a point of view about people who are famous. I generally just like to stay away from it. But I this particular Friday just cannot, right? Because this week we are seeing so many things at the national level that are just unconscionable to think about any president in history in my lifetime doing some of the things that we are seeing happening in front of our own eyes, at least the people who have been put in place. Firing the head of the Library of Congress because of children's books when the Library of Congress has nothing to do with children's books. Learning that we are sending American citizens out of the country to prison, without trial, without due process, in many cases having committed zero crimes. Like, these things are just not okay. Here in my lovely state of Missouri, the voters voted for free, affordable access to reproductive care, which means that abortion would be legal. The voters voted. The state senate is already deciding that they are going to go against what the people of the state of Missouri have voted for. Like, these are just things that are not, historically have not been okay, right? Like, we these are the real issues, and it's having everyday impact on how folks who are the most needy are experiencing life. And I was sitting in worship service a couple weeks ago, and I can hardly remember the rest of the sermon because what stands out to me was a comment made that this is not about Donald Trump, but it is, though. It is. And I'm not the person who is naive enough to think that all politicians are good and that, but I also don't think all politicians are bad. I know everyday people who have decided that they're going to put up with all of the challenges of politics because someone has to be there with um who are willing to stand up for values to align with their constituents. Everyone is not the same. Actually, that narrative is damaging for us. But what I'm seeing happen is that the scapegoats, the people we are putting the burden on and trying to send out into the wilderness, it's it's working. We are focusing on trans people, and I will ask again, how many folks even know a trans person? I have 100 first cousins on my dad's side, and I have one trans cousin. That's 1%. And I believe that I might be over my quota in terms of number of trans people that I actually know, because I have a friend who is a pastor of an affirming church. because I have done work with the LGBTQ chamber here in Kansas City. If you are not in these spaces, do you even know a trans person? To create legislation against trans people for an entire state about kids who are playing sports because they've transitioned from boy to girl. Like, is that really happening? And the answer to that question is no, it's not really happening. It's just the scapegoat to keep us from talking about things like insurrections, talking about getting gifts to the tunes of billions of dollars from Iran. It's to keep us from talking about bringing white Afrikaans from South Africa into the country and giving them free healthcare for a year. It is to keep us from talking about insurrections and all of the inefficiencies that are happening from Doge. It's a scapegoat. And maybe you haven't been following these things at the national level, but based on what the algorithm is pushing towards me, it looks like lots of people are following this Diddy trial. And when he first went to jail, I think he's in jail. I read the indictment. It was a dozen pages, and a dozen pages of allegations of bombing people's cars, allegations of beating people, stomping them, not letting them leave if they try to leave, taking their phones, forcing people to do sex acts that they did not want to do. And this week, I made the mistake of reading the comment section on a video for a gentleman that I just started following because I thought he was funny when he talked about football. And this man suggested that Diddy is in jail right now because he is freaky. That's what he said. And if Diddy's gonna be in jail for being freaky, then Cassie need to be in jail for being freaky too. I couldn't help, but I was like, it was so foreign to me. I did not understand so much because I read the indictment. And I get it. People don't like to read public information. But if you ain't gonna read, why would you want to be ignorant and loud and wrong? I read the comments. I go to the comment section, and folks are suggesting that Cassie is pregnant because she's trying to get sympathy. That why didn't she just walk away? They're saying things like, if Diddy gonna go to jail, she needs to go to jail too. She liked it. And I couldn't think of anything besides scapegoat because in my lifetime, Sean Puff Daddy Diddy Combs has been accused of shooting a woman in the face in a nightclub in 1999. I was 2 years out of college when that allegation happened. The man has been accused of being culpable in in Tupac's death, in Biggie's death, in the death of his children's mother. I don't know if he did it or not. But what I will say is that even Michael Jackson was like, why y'all accusing me of sexual assault? Why don't y'all look at this dude down the street? And you know who was down the street? Sean Puff Daddy Combs. We watched on video this man take this woman, drag her, beat her, stomp her. And folks are saying things like, well, why didn't she leave? I think it's important for me to share a personal story. When I was 12 years old, one of my girlfriends was pregnant. She was 12 too. Turns out that this guy that had grown up with my family was the father. He was 28. Nobody said anything. The man, as far as I know, didn't have anything happen to him. You fast forward several years later, he walks into a beauty shop and shoots his wife, who's trying to leave him, in the head, killing her, and then goes to the park and kills himself. You know what happened when this story came out here in Kansas City, people started to start talking, but they weren't talking beforehand. I guess many of them were wondering why his wife hadn't left him. And what I think is fascinating about scapegoating and pushing things off, if you're Trump, on the LGBTQ community, on Black people, on poor people, on whoever you want, except for focusing on the fact that right now, who is winning in this situation? The world's 10 richest people. We don't want to focus on that. So we're going to scapegoat it over here to get you talking about abortion and all these other things that don't have much to do with the sustainability of the United States. You want to talk about Sean Puff Daddy Combs, instead of talking about this history of scenarios and things that have been associated with him and his name, things we've seen on video. This woman who was shot in the face allegedly by Sean Puff Daddy Combs is saying, you can take the bullet fragments out of my face and you'll be able to prove that he was the one to do it. But see, the person who speaks up, and I know this because I'm a person who speaks up, a person who speaks truth to power is often the one who's scapegoated. Folks are saying that Cassie's husband, how could he sit there? I couldn't even be with her no more. The man was there alongside her. Do we not have examples of what it looks like to stand in solidarity with someone who is suffering? Hear that story, still hold space for them, and then still love them after? I wonder about us. And when I mention that we should embrace this idea of empathy, and people tell me, well, we got to hold people accountable, is it really because we know that we have not been held accountable, that we have watched the world's horrors and said nothing? You see, to me, that's a lack of accountability. You want somebody who's in the heat of it, who's telling us that the man done blown up somebody's car who was trying to help her, and you telling her to walk away, but you can't say nothing. And you just a casual observer when you know your uncle was molesting children. You didn't say a word. When you are part of an entire church system and you know priests are molesting children and you ain't said nothing. So let me just get this straight, can't even speak up and speak out, but you are going to assert that, she should have just walked away. Your slip is showing. Your slip is showing because you won't even walk away from a toxic group chat. You going to that. Do you know the number of people who will straighten their hair, not wear the colors they want to work, adjust the way they talk, not mention their real ideas at work because they are afraid of a boss? Getting underpaid, overlooked, won't speak up, won't walk away when there are 50,000 other jobs you can have. But this situation, when you saw on video, when we know scientifically when a woman leaves that is the most dangerous time in her abusive relationship, that she most likely will be killed. But she should have walked away. You don't even have the courage to speak up in a meeting. Eh, I think it's important that we understand that accountability means that you don't scapegoat, because the ability to scapegoat means you got to have some power. It is always the person in power who goes, don't look over here. It's like a Jedi mind trick. What you need to be looking at is Cassie. R. Kelly peed on a little girl, and folk was still online talking about, well, his music good. What her parents do sending her over there. Instead of asking a question about why is Cassie pregnant by her loving husband, perhaps we should ask why so many times Diddy has been so violent? Isn't that not a better question to ask? Should we not be trying to work to fix whatever that is? Instead of asking, why do women stay? Why don't we ask, why are these people so violent? What is going on with them? Instead of asking ourselves or trying to figure out why people gay and if God likes that or not, why wouldn't we ask, why do folks who have the most worry themselves about food, not feeding people who are forced to be in school every day? You got to go to school every day in K through 12 education. You have to be there. Food should be free for all in the place you have to be. If you don't go, you will be considered truant. In some cases, your parents will be considered criminal. But we don't believe that we should feed children. We got some serious work to do because indictments, economic policy, insurrections, that's where we should be focused. The criminality, the internal hurt that causes you to take your fist and bam somebody else, that's the focus. Don't put that on a goat and push it out into the wilderness. Lift up that rock and look at the dirty worms. Why should you care about this? Because it could be you. Don't wait until it's you. We have a horrible track record of waiting until it's us, until it's our job that is on the line, until it is an issue we care about that is now defunded, until it is our Social Security that is being threatened, until it is our 401k that is not growing, until it is our gas that's almost $6 a gallon. That's the antithesis of empathy. Only caring about it when it is you. We have the ability as human beings to imagine what it might be like if it were us. And when you consider the woman's age, consider the drugs she was under, consider the kinds of power he has, consider what was happening, what she says happened to her when she tried to leave. What regular human can't understand why she didn't go? And when I think about these situations that in essence have nothing to do with me, I can't help but think about how this shows up in our everyday lives. Because in our everyday lives, we belong to volunteer groups where folks will pick one person and just attack that person because they're lifting up the rock, showing us the dirty worms, telling us that we need to make adjustments. And instead of making the adjustments, focusing on the dysfunction in our culture, what do? We attack that person. I have had it happen to me. The narrative that we share out is that, oh, this and oh, that, instead of looking at the dysfunction and addressing the dysfunction. You know, empathy undergirds all of this. I believe it is why God has asked me to talk about empathy as a foundation to being able to get different people to get along, to be more inclusive, to stop excluding, to address some of the world's just ridiculous harms. But I am concerned that if we don't understand the basics of consent, that we don't understand that, listen, man, if I like tea and I tell you I want tea right now, that don't mean that at 7 o'clock I want tea. And if I tell you I don't want it, that you just you can just pour it in my mouth anyway. I did not consent to tea. It don't matter if I like it or not. I don't want tea at 7. And who are we if we are the folks that we think that we can force people to drink tea if they don't want it? I don't care how many people this woman slept with. If she didn't want to sleep with that one, making her is sexual assault. Violent crime and homicides are up in Kansas City, Missouri right now. And what's driving those numbers are domestic violence homicides. Non-fatal shootings are down by almost half. but domestic violence homicides are up. Some of these people, the police had no knowledge of any issue. You know why? Because people don't speak up. You know why people don't speak up? Because they don't want to be scapegoated. I understand that. I have bent and twisted and turned and tried to be more emotionally intelligent, tried to think about the right time, beat myself up for having a little emotion in my voice when someone's being mistreated or someone's being racist or somebody's being sexist or homophobic or all the things. It's hard being the one to speak up because people will push it on you. And so sometimes I have overcorrected, gone too far the other way, tried to be more silent so that I'm not the one with the bullseye on my back. I get that. But don't become a keyboard warrior, taking up for these people who just, I don't own the moral compass, but some people ain't even own the compass. What are we doing? What are we doing? And when we can't acknowledge this, when what we're seeing happen right in front of our eyes, how do we understand it when it happens with the person who's sitting in the cubicle next to us who's being mistreated? If we can't understand this in these big ways, when we've seen video of a woman being stomped in a hotel lobby, crawled up in a ball, if we can't understand it at that level, when a man pees on a little girl, if we can't understand it there, how are we going to understand that after someone has fulfilled their debt to society by going to prison, that the least we could do is give them ID when they get out? If we can't understand it with the video that we saw, with the lies we're being told politically, how do we show up with more empathy and compassion to feed children who happen to be hungry? I'll bring it all the way to your own house. If we can't figure this out in these super big ways, how do we figure it out when our children have a different personality type than us and don't want to be on the same career path that we are, that we don't bully, but we bring along? I'm upset. I'm I'm upset because I was surprised. I like to think more of us from a humanity standpoint. And there's just too many good people remaining silent. You see, you can't be neutral. When hate is way over here, this is where the engineer in me comes out. When neutral is here, when hate is way over here, a whole bunch of people who are neutral are not helpful because it's tipping the whole culture off the screen. If hatefulness is here, you need people over here pouring into compassion, pouring into empathy, speaking up and speaking out and helping. Neutral supports the side of the oppressor. It might make us feel good to lay our sins on the back of the goat and send it out into the wilderness and absolve us of any harm. But I got news for you, sugar. That goat went out there, but all those sins still resting on its back, and still all of the hurt, harm, and vitriol and hatred that was created in that community. You think you put it on that goat's back and sent it out into the wilderness, but the impact of it is still there. What we gonna do about it? It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.